Mark Horton Reed is in Point Betsy Lighthouse in Sleeping Bear Dunes in my home state, Sleeping Bear Dunes, National Lakeshore, the northwest side of Michigan. Good evening from Denmark. Gordon Smith is saying. Bill Wingroves thinks he was here first. Well, he may have been. Stingray in Seattle. Ted Ryman in Cape Town in the RSA, the Republic of South Africa. Ed Worley. Hello, Ed. Here in the States. Likewise, Rob Sternstein, who's up in Boston where it's cold. David James is back with me again today. Here we're live in Studio B as usual at the Beach Street Yacht Club, where it's about to become rainy and cold and windy. One of those Pacific storms that I'm sure we'll survive. Welcome to all of you. Julia is doing well. She's still in hospital getting her tune-up, but maybe we'll be out tonight. Hopefully. Welcome to the show. Let's get it on the proverbial road.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
David, thanks for joining again. Did you enjoy doing Tuesday's show?
I did. It was sort of my first experience doing that, and I enjoyed it very much, actually.
Well, you were terrific. And the microphone, the acoustics of that mic, Julia and you sound alike, according to our folks. John Sangmeister, who called from right after the show, and he said, boy, they sound just alike. I said, well, maybe it's because they both went to Stanford. And he said, no, I think it's the mic, and it is. There's a lot of processing on the mic and compression and EQ, equalization.
I'm very flattered.
Well, no, you look great, and thank you again for filling in. You were terrific. Again, we're live from Studio B. David James is with us, and I'm, of course, your host, Tom Ehman. As if you all didn't know that, our show number 502 for Friday, the 4th of March. And we got 503 and 504 next week. We're going to have somebody from the Kiwi Home Defense joining us next week to fill us in, give us the latest on all that. And then we're going to do a special show number 505 on guess what? Guess what, David?
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that it's the 505 class.
You are exactly right, on the 505 class, and we're working on that because we did a show for the show number 470, and we featured guess what? The 470 class, as you would. And that was very much appreciated, and I think we'll do that again when we get to 505 the week after next. Just some sad news here to start. I'm not a big cricket fan because, cricket's not that big a deal. Oh, where's the scarf? Gordon Smith wants to know where your scarf is. It's right there. Not that you need to put it on, but it is down there below. Over there in the back if you need it.
I'm glad to know if I get chilly.
It's so warm in the studio. Just to say that it's sad news coming out of Down Under. This was a famously good cricket icon, they called him, Shane Warne, dead at age 52. He was up in Thailand on holiday and apparently had a heart attack. And just in the last day or so, they lost another big-time cricketer. So all of you who are cricket fans, especially down in Oz in Australia, sad news indeed. I want to thank our guests from Tuesday. We had a terrific show with Chris Exley, who introduced me to this group, to Sail Last, and to Tom Hansen. And Chris came on. We actually recorded that's why I look like a crouton. We recorded that before Tuesday's show and had an intro from Chris, who's up in Boston. Terrific guy. He's very well known here. Among our FOSI, among Sailing Illustrated types. So Chris, thanks for doing that intro. And he introduced this outfit called Lead Advanced Strength Teamwork, LAST. That's why it's LAST, not because they want to be last place or anything, but it's called Sail Last, Help First, Sail Last. And what they're doing, thanks to the executive director, Tom Hansen, they're putting kids on big boats, something that we've talked about on this show. David, you've talked about it. Kimball Livingston, John Sangmeister, and many others have talked about it at length. And some people are doing it, which is really, really cool to see. And we ran some of those examples the other day. But bravo Zulu to Tom Hansen, who's the executive director down in Fort Lauderdale. FLL is the airport code for Lauderdale, and we use airport codes. And thanks to his sponsors who keep that program alive, and he's hoping to expand. So if any of you are interested, please do contact Tom and his Sail Last program. And you can do that at saillast.com. If you want to see what they're doing, if you want to contribute to what they're doing, if you want to do it yourself in your home waters, that would be a terrific thing, I think, and something we should be focusing on more as cool people in the sport. Right, David? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I thought it was a very good program, but more than that, I mean, it's a very good initiative that he has underway. It was just heartwarming to see, and I hope he gets support, but also it spreads elsewhere.
And the comments were terrific, too. Replying to Kate Allen Long, that's the one. Sorry to see Stanford. Yeah, the Stanford women's soccer captain, she was the goalie, right, David? You went to Stanford.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the deal with that? It was suicide, right? Sadly?
I haven't heard a lot
I
of
read
details, but I know the basketball team has commemorated her, and obviously it's a very, very sad thing. The fourth one in the last year.
Yeah, well, I think this period that we've come through, that is the COVID period. Hopefully we're through that. One never knows. Jody Shields, what a 24 hours between Rod and Shane. Yeah, that was the other cricketer who passed away. I guess it was just in 24 hours. John Emmett is saying, replying to, this is an important step in. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about Russia. Obviously, it's having a huge impact, not only on our sport, but indeed, obviously, on the entire world. Thanks, Warren Schasser down in Brisbane, Australia, who's saying, congrats on 500 shows. We had over 300 millimeters. Yeah, I saw you had rain bomb down there in that part of the world. And, okay, well, we all talk about the weather and don't, what was it, the Mark Twain quote? We don't do anything about it.
Exactly.
No one does anything about it. Saillast.com. I commend them to you. Thanks again to Chris and Tom for helping us with that show. And who is Ernest? What's his first name? Who's a Fozy, and he's got kids on his boat, Long John Sangmeister, and that's
well, there was the Chick Magnet, which I thought was a
great name. Yeah, that was the name of his boat. What's Mr. Ernest's first name? I've forgotten now. And his son, that was I have to come back to that. Also, you remember, David, when I ran that piece? I guess it was in the last show, and it was the Maori saying. I'll dig it up here. I'll dig it up because I want to be very careful. And I said it was mate, and it's actually the last word was, and this was something that Magnus ran. It's not mate, it's mate, which means, die. And I said I thought it meant mate, but we'll cover that as well going as we get into the show going forward. We get to the starting line now. And speaking of Ukraine, these images are coming in. That was the first one that I saw. I used it during the last couple shows. And this from our friends down in Newport Beach. We've shown you these before, but obviously the Sydney Opera House, Sydney Harbor, showing solidarity as well. And then some new ones that have come in. This from Bora Galari, I think Galari Sales, a couple of these. U.S. Sailing ran this in their announcement saying that they were in agreement with World Sailing on banning Russian sailors and boats and Belarusian sailors. Finn class and countless other classes have followed suit, which I like. I like to see leadership from World Sailing, but not coercion. David, you're a kind of a decentralist de Tocquevillian, as am I and Julia, and that is give some leadership, but then let the individual local organizations, the classes, the clubs do their thing.
Yeah, but I'm a little concerned about leaving it up to each individual organizing authority. I'm just not sure that your average OA has the bandwidth, the expertise to really know, to make their own decisions about it. So I'm glad to see some leadership from the IOC,
exactly,
from the national organizations, from ISAF in our case, but also from the National Judo Association, who I was...
They took his belt. They took Putin's black belt away, didn't they?
He used to be the honorary chairman of the World Judo Association. They took that away. I was
good. Glad, then they ought to kick him in the cojones when he doesn't have a cup on. Well, the Finn class as well, and it's nice to see. I still like local control because things are going to be different. You might end up, for example, you might end up with Comanche, which apparently is registered, I don't know, in Monaco or wherever it is. And it's probably owned ultimately for the benefit of a Russian oligarch, but it's a corporation based God knows where. And there's a bunch of sailors, Mitch Booth and so on, that are sailing on that boat, including some Ukrainians. And if the IMA or the people down at the Heineken Regatta in the Caribbean this weekend just started yesterday. Yeah, it started yesterday's Friday. And they decide that Comanche is really not by way of a Russian yacht because of whatever the special circumstance. Okay, that's why I like local control. We'll find a local.
Well, and the ORFC and the New York Yacht Club and the major organizations have the expertise and
Exactly.
the resources to figure that out for themselves. But is Sausalito Yacht Club going to figure that out? They need to have some guidance.
Yeah, but by the same token, the Sausalito Yacht Club, which is not it's not a puny club. It's right here on the bay and one of the significant clubs. Okay, it's not St. Francis or San Francisco, perhaps. But they would then, no doubt, call up we were talking about the YRA in the pre-show, the Yacht Racing Association of San Francisco Bay. They'd call up you as an esteemed judge and race officer and so on. They would call up St. Francis or San Francisco or U.S. Sailing or whomever. Might even call me up, and that would be scary. What advice I would give them.
Well, and the rules.
I'd tell them to kick out the Russian vodka out of the bar first thing.
Well, and RRS 76-1 does give the authority to the actual organizing authority for everything except continental and world championships. So
exactly,
it is up to them ultimately.
And Bill Wingrove is saying Comanche is Cayman registered. Monica Diaz is checking in from Spain. Clark Chapin who is a superb race officer himself, national race officer, and so on. Of course, Comanche isn't a Russian boat; it's registered in the Cayman Islands. No, well, that's what I say. And the flip side of that, of course, Clark, David, Bill Wingrove, is that if you decide that this boat Comanche is registered in the Cayman Islands or Scorpios is registered in Monaco, but it's still a bloody Russian boat.
Yeah, absolutely. I
mean, make the decision.
It's not too difficult to figure out who the beneficial owner is. I mean, sometimes with an apartment building, it can be very difficult to figure it out. But with a yacht, I mean, the crew knows who the owner is.
Ralph Roberts, a mighty Totara. What's that mean? That must be Maori. A Totara, like a totem? I don't know what that means, Ralph. Has fallen. And lots of other comments. J. Frederick Bland is saying, sorry to see Stan. Yeah, that was apparently suicide. That's what I read in the paper this morning. Tough, because she was obviously a brilliant player and very popular and well-liked and so on. But maybe she had some other problems of which we sadly were not aware.
We do have Kate Walker joining us from Jeddah in case we have any questions about.
Is Jeddah in Kate Walker? Is Kate Walker in Jeddah?
That's where she signed on from.
I better have some coffee. I'm talking about our crouton today. Okay, well, that's nice to know, Kate, that you're there. Tell us what the mood is in Jeddah and whether that's where the next cup is going to be held. I don't know if that's Triton's, what do you call that? Triton's what? What's that thing that Triton, it's not a spear? What is it that he holds? But it looks like it.
You talking about the finial at the top of the...
Yeah, the finial. Nice. Very nicely done, you Stanfordite. That's Triton something, isn't it? Or not quite? Well, anyway, it's the Ukrainian flag. Gordon Smith, to your comment the other day, he said, yeah, Triton's Triton. Gordon Smith, I've lost the comment now. He said there's going to be an international regatta of super yachts in the Maldives. You were right. I mean, here you heard it first here on Sailing Illustrated. David said on Tuesday he heard that all the yachts were heading toward the Maldives. Not only do they not have they have no relationship with the U.S. There's no extradition with the U.S. There's none with the EU either, apparently.
Well, ideal.
So why?
I know where my next holiday is going to be. Although having been there once, I'll say there's no wind at all. It's like a mill pond,
in the Maldives,
which is great for scuba diving, but not so much for sailing. Although they're all motor yachts, they're going there.
So Ralph Roberts is telling us that a totara, I guess it's a totara, is the large tree in the forest. WH, I'm not quite sure. Okay. Well, I think he's talking about Putin, and we are going to talk about Putin. I reacted here on the show. I was not too happy about World Sailing's tentative. I called it probably worse than that. Probably called it Croutonic and more, but their original posting. They cleaned that up after they got some guidance from the IOC the next day and came out a little stronger. But a lot of you reacted as well. SailWeb, our good friend Gerald New said the yachting world's reaction to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has been solid. Well, it was after World Sailing's original wishy-washy statement was hastily replaced when they realized just how crass it was. It seems that the change of leadership at, quote, the world governing body for the sport of sailing, unquote, has not dimmed its ability to be hopelessly out of touch with the people it claims to represent. That Gerald New at sailweb.co.uk, which is a terrific website. And that was, I think, probably an appropriate comment. But a lot of others, David and I were discussing, the Star Sailors League, a lot of other organizations have come out. The SSL notes the recommendations by the IOC and the World Sailing that Russian and Belarusian athletes and officials not be invited to or allowed to participate in international competitions. Accordingly, the SSL, the Star Sailors League, has today decided that the Gold Cup team Russia is suspended from participation in the SSL Gold Cup until further notice. And that's a big event we're looking forward to later in the year. I think it's now been pushed to September, and we shall see. We'll be following that. Also, we mentioned the Heineken Regatta a minute ago down in St. Martin. That got underway, I think, Wednesday registration. Thursday was the first day of sailing, second day today. And the St. Martin Heineken Regatta is an international sailing event that for over 40 years has welcomed sailors of all nations to share in friendly competition. And I'll tell you, it's a terrific event. David, have you sailed in that?
I've done Antigua 3 times, but I haven't done St. Martin yet.
It's a terrific event. Due to the recent developments in Ukraine and hostilities on behalf of the Russian government, which our organization condemns, we cannot maintain the friendliness between all of our competitors without suspending the participation of teams registered as Russian and Belarusian. While we wish that sailing could be free from politics, we can all race together on the water. The current situation and feelings of the sailing community at large makes this impossible. Yeah, I think that was a good comment. And just more of the same from them. It was interesting, David, that originally the internet, the internet IP, Clark Chapin will help me out, but the International Paralympic Organization.
Oh, right. Yeah, I saw the change of heart.
And they did have that change of heart, which was to say, well, you can participate, but you're going to have to do it under a neutral flag or something. I mean, these poor kids and adults who are there, they're not. It's not their fault. And they've been training, they've been there, they're now in Beijing for the Paralympic Games, and all of a sudden they can't participate. So the Paralympic Committee, the International Committee, said, no, yes, you can participate as long as you're under your own flag. You're under a neutral flag and you're not representing Russia. And then apparently under pressure from the IOC, they backtracked on that, right?
Well, there were a lot of teams that were going to boycott.
Was that what was happening?
Yeah, and so the whole thing was going to fall apart. And so they, I think this morning, changed their minds and said, yeah, no Russians, no Belarusian athletes.
Follow the money.
Although it's interesting because it's in Beijing, it's not going to necessarily smooth the waters between Russia and China.
Did you see that when they're having the opening ceremony, whoever's the president of is it the IP? What is it, Clark Chapin? IPC, International Paralympic, John Emmett will know. Whatever the name of that international organization is for the Paralympics. And they were doing the opening ceremony, and the guy who's the chair or the president, whatever he is, giving the opening ceremony speech, it was blocked. It was censored. It was canceled in China on live television. They cut him off so they couldn't hear the speech.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I did not see that. I'm not surprised it would be blockaded in Russia, but in China as well. That surprises me.
And it was. Monica Diaz says the Russians are not the problem. Yeah, the poor Russian people, the poor Ukrainian people. Tuned in a bit late. You see Joyce Chiarella saying, do my eyes deceive me? Is that my old friend David James? Aloha, love.
Hello, Joyce.
That is indeed. Love that American One pin. What was David's involvement? Travis Mayer is asking.
There was an organization called the Founders Club, and I was a member of that. That's what the pin is. So that was the 2000 St. Francis Yacht Club Challenge for the America's Cup, and so I've been
lift up a little. I just go to the close-up camera on there.
I've been a supporter of.
Lift up some more, and then we can see that.
Oh, I
pin.
see what you mean.
So there we go. Yeah. I just do a close-up. Oh yeah, there it is.
So we went down for the Louis Vuitton Cup Finals, which was thrilling, and there was a big contingent of St. Francis members down there. They did a fantastic series of social events.
2000 Cup.
2000, yeah.
That was the last great yacht club effort.
From St. Francis.
Well, any club, largely privately funded.
Right. It was a membership-driven event. There were dozens, hundreds of members who were down there, and the America One team did a fantastic job of giving us
we were a day late and $1 short.
It went down to the wire.
But well led, Paul K.R., the late great Bob Billingham, and that was arguably, not even arguably, was the best Challenger selection series ever. The Louis Vuitton Cup against the Italians, and it went the full.
Went to the seventh race, I think 7.
Was it 7? First to win.
And it was
7.
More or less overlapped at the last.
Well, a lot of those races were.
It was
unbelievable.
Great racing.
Ken Saban in Toledo, Ohio, saying hello. Cool boat graphics on America One. Yes, those were. And by the way, the green kites, which kept exploding. Do you know why?
So what I've heard, it had nothing to do with the sailcloth or the dye.
Are you sure?
Am I certain? No, but that's what Kostecki told me.
Well, what ultimately was discovered years later, by the way, after those kites had been sold to other people, notably our team, when we became an Oracle Team USA, we ended up with containers of that stuff for those IACC boats. Wasn't the color, it was a theory that because of green, and you know why plants are green?
To absorb light.
Because it's the spectrum of light that the most energy comes in, chlorophyll, yada, yada. So those green kites, the theory was, were absorbing a lot more sun down there in sunny in the land of the long white cloud, beautiful New Zealand, and that they were breaking up as a result. No, we discovered afterwards it was just lighter cloth. It was not the cloth that had been specced. It was, or else it was wrongly specced. I'm not sure which.
So it wasn't the green color.
It wasn't the green color. No. It was the cloth. It just was not correctly specced. Glued, not stitched, best of 9. Yes, great series, cool boat. Yeah, okay. Everybody's in there. But the Heineken Regatta is going on. They have booted the Russians and the Belarusians. This is a group of Ukrainian, obviously, Opti sailors, and they're training. If you recognize Valencia, Monica will. They're training in Valencia this week. This is the image of the week from Tip and Shaft, Paulo Doncev. And these Ukrainian optimists are training in Valencia following the directives of the blah, blah, blah. The French Yachting Federation and basically all the other federations, I think national federations in the world, followed suit this week. That courtesy of Tip and Shaft, which is that terrific, everybody gets Scuttlebutt. Everybody, or Scuttlebutt Europe, which is now called something else. Changed the name. But it's an email newsletter, and of course Magnus Wheatley, who's on here, his terrific blog which comes out. And also I commend to you again Tip and Shaft. I think it's at tipandshaft.com, and Google it, and it comes out every Friday and is a French-based terrific, mostly offshore, but terrific stuff. Now, believe it or not, David, you didn't like, I in the pre-show when we were just getting sorted out here, you don't like cats apparently.
They're not my favorite pet.
You like dogs?
I do.
Well, some people are cat people.
I'm aware. We had a cat part of the time I was growing up. More or less involuntarily, it moved in with us. But.
Well, did you know there's a FIFA, which is the soccer federation, the global federation for football. Did you know there's a FIFA?
FIFA.
FIFA, F-I-F-E.
Oh, F-E, feline?
That's the international, that's in French. It's the Federation International of Felines. I kid you not. And they have also banned Russian cats.
Well, I can't feel sorry for
where'd
cats.
my video go?
Meow. Meow.
Can you see the difference between them? Yeah, there is a subtle difference. But can you see a real difference between a Russian cat and other cats? That's what is interesting. Ukraine crisis is becoming more and more interesting and funny. Russian cats have been banned, have been sanctioned by the FIFA. FIFA has banned them, Russian cats, from entering the international competition. That's the Feline International Federation. And now we are waiting to see if this ban will affect the Putin in any way, or Ukrainians will get encouraged for this.
Meow.
No, come on. Elizabeth Little says she loves the chat. Hi, Elizabeth Little, whom, of course, you know David well. Is a Russian cat fast? I'll bet you, we make fun of this federation, but I'll bet you there are way more members of this federation than there are in most other international federations, such as our beloved World Sailing. What do you think?
I just wonder how you rate them. I mean, is it like seconds per mile or?
FIFA. Okay. And I thank you. Several of you sent that to me. I didn't attribute it to any one of you because I'm sure it would have embarrassed a few of you too. What do they rate? Trevor Walker's asking. That's funny, Mark Dowdy. He is a Russian cat fan. Okay. Thanks, Jody Shields. Mark Thompson says, I was dating the woman who was later to become my wife when I found out she was allergic to cats. I knew she was a keeper. Helen, oh, God, here we go. I like cats and dogs. My cat doesn't like my dog, however you tell her.
Oh, boy. Now we've started something.
Now we've started. Speaking of starting something, here's an idea. And this came from Jyrki Järvi in Finland or wherever he is, but he's Finnish, obviously. He is saying that the general recall flag is displayed at his yacht club, Helsingfors Segelklubb, HSK, which I assume is Jyrki, I assume is in Finland. Is it in Germany or it looks, I think it's Finnish. And, you know, when we had that We Stand By You situation going on during the early days of COVID and all these yacht clubs, remember that? Your club, San Francisco Yacht Club, displayed.
That's where it started.
It started there, and we had those guys on and covered that. And then eventually hundreds of clubs in Australia, virtually clubs on every continent, including Antarctica. We finally got a club or an organization down there to display. What were the flags we displayed?
I don't remember what the specific signal flags were, but we are standing by to
it was
provide
an old
assistance.
It was an old something from the early part of the last century when there were some naval flags, and there was a famous incident between I think a British boat and American ships out in the North Atlantic someplace, and they hoisted those flags. And your club, San Francisco Yacht Club, picked up on that. In any event, I think we ought to get yacht clubs around the world to show some solidarity. I can't talk today. To show, just to hoist, to display the general recall flag. And maybe it should be general recall over, tell me what, code R, signal code flag R for Russia. Recall the Russians.
Are you recalling a specific class? Then you want to recall both.
Well, come on, don't be so hyper-technically.
No, but I think the general recall flag by itself sends the message. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, maybe we should get clubs. Yeah, Russia is definitely OCS. James Frederick Bland is saying, how quick are the cats from Slovenia? Fly the black flag. Now, there's an idea. They could fly the general recall flag and then the black flag below it. James Bland is saying. Well, let's think about that during the show. We'll watch for comments with ideas from anybody. But I think getting yacht clubs to do that on some basis might be a good thing to do. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I agree. I think it would be a nice symbolism, and the colors help a lot as well.
Gerard Sheridan, who's another one you know, Russians have broken Rule 69. Indeed, and a lot more than that. Thanks, Jyrki Järvi. Thank you for sending that along. John Emmett, I would be worried to put a general recall or black flag with a Russian flag because people who don't understand flags could. Yeah, I wouldn't put the Russian flag up for the Jolly Roger. Ted Ryman says, wow, FB won't let me comment or give a big break to the Matthias Collins post. I wonder why that is. Matthias Collins, who's down in Argentina. I'm with David. The general recall flag by itself demonstrates solidarity with Ukraine. Ukraine adding anything else is superfluous. David, you got a vote from Clark Chapin. We ought to, just like we saw there, in fact, Jyrki Järvi sent along, I didn't put it here in the slides, but he sent along a flagpole at some club, somewhere, presumably his club, that had just the general recall flag up on the Yardo. Let's do that. Let's get, sounds like an idea.
I'll call San Francisco Yacht Club.
And we'll do that and see if we can get St. Francis and a few others. When you do, send us your pictures. And we'll display them here going forward.
Actually,
thanks.
David Robinson might even be on today.
He might be. Thanks, Jyrki Järvi. Thank you again for sending that along. We've been using this, which has shown up all over the place now. No big deal, but I don't know why that hasn't happened, John. But thank you. I noticed I'm looking at Emmett's comment. but we are definitely live on all the other sites. So we've been using this knot, and we'll continue to do that, I think, in solidarity, unless and until one of you has a better idea. Now, David, I wouldn't let you watch this next segment when we were doing the tech check.
All right.
This day in history. The 4th of March, today, in 2012, 10 years ago today. Do you know what happened on this day in history? Does anybody, any of our Fozy on here? Here's your first clue. Does anybody know Austral lost its mast? Jody is saying. No. 10 years ago today. Did Australia lose its mast? Damn, what I found was March 5th, March 5th, 1995. One Australia becomes the first challenger to lose a match race by shipwreck. Yeah, I was out there on the water, saw that happen. That was, I know tomorrow's history, tomorrow's history today. Matthias Collins, I won my first race in a world championship. Congratulations, Matthias. He's a big-time sailing sailor, among other classes. Well, here's your second clue. Russia discovers new cure for constipation. Okay, well, we won't belabor this. Vladimir Putin wins the Russian presidential election for the second time. Remember, he was president from what, 04 to 08, and then was prime minister, and then was elected president. He's been president now for 10 years today. Putin has been in his second term as president since 2012, having served a previous term for, it was 2000. It was 8 years, 2000 until 2008. Between 08 and 12, he served as PM. Dmitry Medvedev. It's interesting, David, that who's the number one tennis player now? It's the Russian. It's Medvedev.
Oh, is that right?
He's now number one after what happened down in Australia in the Australian Open. I wonder how they're going to deal with him.
I haven't seen an announcement from the Tennis Federation.
I haven't either. That's an interesting point. Maybe one of our Fozy will dig that up. That's this day in history 10 years ago today. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Speaking of nice people, I didn't know how to get to this segue, but let's go to the Master Mentor segment here with our good friend and Fozy, John Emmett, who checked in, still on holiday out in Cornwall. Do you know, David, by whom he is standing before we roll the tape?
I do not. Cornwall. No, I don't.
Before we roll the tape, I got to go back to this comment. Clark Chapin saying, yeah, but during that period when he was prime minister, whenever Medvedev spoke, you could see Putin's lips move. Gordon Smith got it. That's King Arthur.
That makes sense.
And not only that,
but and he's got Excalibur there.
Yeah, he's got the Excalibur, and we've got John as clean shaven.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. I'm here in Cornwall, and I believe the man behind me is King Arthur. So this, I never know whether to say whether it's a myth or a legend, but a famous Briton based down near the River Camel or Camelot. And the idea was there was a round table bringing together everybody and united the Britons. The legend is that he pulled a sword from a stone. That sword is Excalibur, which we see with him there, and that was his divine right to rule. And it's one of my favourite stories from growing up, and indeed there's been a lot of TV series and movies based around this. But if nothing else, I think now is a really important time to be united, and probably the troubles we have in the world today have actually brought people and countries more together at this difficult time. So I'm going to carry on wandering around, see what else we can see. But I do think in terms of people's campaigns, Olympic campaigns, or even you know, people who are sailing just at club level, having these little timeouts to have a mental refresh is very important. And I only realised, I mean, it's literally been years now since I've been on holiday. It was almost like I had to learn a new skill.
Nice segue to the music. Nice jazz. in Cornwall. Bill Wingrove was wondering if that was Obi-Wan
So one of the
Kenobi.
reasons I think that UK is a good country for sailing, if we forget about lottery funding and all those sort of things, is because we are a small island. So for trade, it was absolutely necessary to go sailing, and that's part of the culture. And I see that water sports are very much a part of the culture for British people. Looking at my background for 2012, we worked with China. You don't have that same relationship at the moment between people and the sea, and it's sad to see. I don't think there'll be in Palma or in the air and these sort of regattas. So hopefully that will improve, and we'll see more countries sailing. Here I'm in Tintagel, so it's actually an island, much like Portland. You can see the bridge in the background, and these locations are chosen primarily because they're easy to defend. And now we're just left with ruins, but it's always nice to know a little bit about the history. And I do think that the legend or the myth of King Arthur just tells some very interesting and universal stories. But yeah, any day by the sea is a good day for me.
Any day by the sea is a good day for me. Clean shaven. With his camera lady, his wife, the gold medalist from China, Lily Zhu. Nice segment as usual. Thank you, John. And I had to do a little research for that super segment. But the guy's on holiday and he's still contributed 3 videos this
And
week.
some beautiful photography.
Well, Lily, I think, she went to Southampton, or maybe still going to Southampton University, and is studying radio, television, and film, I think, communications.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so she's a pro. Stingray saying, thanks, John. Nice. Yep, it was really nice. Ryman down in Cape Town thought that gal behind him on the bridge was going to jump. God forbid if that happened in the middle of this. That statue of King Arthur is seriously cool. Stingray up in Seattle is saying.
And Bill Canfield says that for tennis, they can play under neutral.
Yeah, I saw that. That's interesting. Well, a lot of those tennis players are Russian by birth, but they're living in Monaco, they're living in Florida, they're living out here. Tell me where, right?
Well, it's like the Formula One drivers. Half of them live in Monaco.
Exactly. Well, I did grab this picture because he was clean shaven, and he did, he stood on his, his tripod that looked a little bit like the Excalibur for a minute, but I had to go back and do the research. Do you know what year was the myth of King Arthur? I don't know, myth, maybe it's the reality, maybe it's truth. And the Excalibur?
Within the Monty Python universe? Or...
I think it's what, like 1270 or something like that, right? I don't remember. I just thought you'd know.
I don't off the
I
top
just
of my
thought
head.
going to Stanford and all that.
I think it was 1977.
Well, there is from a famous British children's book called Our Island Story, written by a woman named H.E. Marshall. Henrietta, I think, was her first name. And that is the drawing that'll apparently, I'm not British, obviously, but a lot of young Brit kids saw, and John referred to, remember this, a childhood memory. Arthur draws the sword from the stone in that drawing from her book in 1905. The statue doesn't look at all like Graham Chapman, who played the part in Monty Python. And, you guys are something else. Did you, James Bland, did I say that John's nickname was Tripod? No. Now shake your finger, David, at that.
I've decided not to shake my finger if it's witty.
Oh, okay, good. That's what Julia does too. Arthur has a wedgie, wet hog. Now I also, in this segment, I put on my Facebook page last night, I just put up a picture of an A10 warthog.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if Wet Hog, who's in one of our Fozy in Annapolis, would have commented on that. He didn't see it, but my mother texted me this morning at 04:30. Well, she's 3 hours east, so she was up. And she said, "What is that plane on your Facebook page? Why are you putting militia, military things?" I said, "Mom, Google an A-10 Warthog and then think about what's going on in the world." And she got it immediately. She said, "Okay, I understand now." that 40 miles, is it 40 miles, they say? Have you seen the satellite pictures?
It's 45 kilometers, so 20
They originally said it was
miles and
17
change.
miles, and now it's 40 miles long, the convoy.
Yeah.
Now, do you know why it stopped?
So I read 3 different theories. Omar Bradley famously said, amateurs talk about strategy, but professionals talk about logistics.
Yes.
And so I hadn't realized it takes, for one artillery battalion to support, is 50 truck deliveries per day.
Wow, food and diesel. And
So as soon as you get beyond 100 miles from your nearest depot, it becomes almost impossible to supply. And so a lot of those have run out of fuel. And because they're parked 2 abreast on the road, the fuel tanks can't get past to get to the front of the
3
convoy.
abreast, some of them.
Some
yeah,
of them
right.
3 abreast.
Yeah. Well, I heard this morning they finally tracked, apparently, and this seemed authoritative, if you can believe the New York Times. Apparently, the Ukrainians figured out how to block, with all manner of debris and devices and mines in the road, I'm not sure what else, block the front end of that convoy, and the whole thing ground to a halt. They burned up all their fuel.
Well, and they've been continually trying to do that, and the Russians
Exactly.
try and clear it, and then they destroy the front of the convoy again. The less hopeful explanation for the convoy stalling is that they're waiting for the reinforcements to come from the east so that they can coordinate the attack.
Indeed.
Which is a not as hopeful explanation.
Yeah, hell of an army, James Bland is saying, if you run out of fuel.
Although that's not uncommon. During World War II, both the Germans going west and the Brits going east, both convoys ran out of fuel. It's very difficult to keep the front of a convoy resupplied with fuel.
And that's why air superiority is superior. And if you listen to the Russian or Chinese news, you'll hear 2 more, maybe more than that. You can't depend on the New York Times, Bland is saying. Let's get into something more sailing-oriented, and that, of course, also has something to do with what's going on. And that
Although before we leave the topic entirely, I did want to read one comment from a gentleman whose name didn't ring a bell with me, but Clayton Allen Embley.
Tifosi.
Yeah, he said Formula One pulled the F1 race from Russia, which I knew, and then a NASCAR team donated 1 million rounds of ammunition.
Oh, really?
If you want to get serious, that is serious.
That is serious. I didn't see that about the NASCAR team. F1 was one of the first organizations to react to pulling that
right.
F1 race out of Sochi.
I haven't seen the ammo donation. That's handy in kind.
Well, we'll see. Now, the America's Cup is also related to some of what at least is going on. Let's talk about non-war, non-Ukraine, not Russian news to start with, and that is the good news that we hear from La Gazzetta dello Sport, the famously good Italian sports paper. Luna Rossa have reportedly secured Jimmy Spithill for the next America's Cup. This was reported yesterday. The tough nationality rules allow Australian Spithill to sail under the Italian flag again, as he was part of their team at the last regatta in Auckland, as you will all know. Well-informed Italian yachting journalist Gianluca Pisani reported for La Gazzetta that the Luna Rossa designers have been busy since they lost the match 7-3 to Team New Zealand in a highly competitive cup final. But wait, there's more. And I think this is very good news. I think it's also starting to show, David, as we're seeing among some of the other teams, I think we're starting to see a passing of the proverbial baton to the younger foiling set. And do you know who that gentleman is? He's a bit of a rock star in Italy these days.
I don't know his name. I've seen his photograph.
They have reportedly been joined, that is Jimmy and Francesco, by Ruggero Tita. Ruggero, I had to look, that's how you pronounce it in Italian. I'm 95% sure I had to go online and check that. Ruggero Tita, the golden boy of Italian yachting, after winning gold in the foiling NACRA 17 catamaran at last year's Tokyo Olympics. He had already won the NACRA 17 World Championships in 2018. And according to Wikipedia, Ruggero is an Italian sailor. He competed at the 2020 Summer Olympics, as you just heard, with Caterina Bonti in the NACRA 17, winning a gold medal. That, of course, as you know, is a mixed gender class. Also sailed in 2016, but prior to that, from the age of 12, he's been on the national team. He conquered the title of Italian champion in the Optimus class at 13 years old. Later, he became European team race champion and Swiss Open champion. He competed in the 29er class, and after a short period, he moved to the 49er class, where he became an Italian champion. So here's a guy who has sailed, like we always say on here, get kids on big boats, but also get kids in as many different classes. You know, I don't know what boats you sailed growing up, but I sailed Sunfish and Lasers and Flying Scots and Interlakes and Lightnings and Snipes and Sea Scows and Thistles and you know, I think that's part of the reason I became a pretty good sailor, was jumping around and learning how to make different boats go fast, not just as, what was your famous saying? That got a lot of good ink last Tuesday, on Tuesday's show, about kids in high school and college.
About
starting,
oh,
oh
yeah. So, I mean, they get so locked into the whole Opti program, and then when they turn a certain age, then they can move into laser radials, and you know, it's a very track driven. And then you get to high school and you sail FJs, and in college you sail FJs or 420s. And so when I have, you know, college and high school kids on my boat, they can roll tack like crazy. But you know, I ask them to do a jibe set or anything big boat related, and they're lost.
Well, this kid is a star. Stingray thinks that he may have been on Luna Rossa in the recent campaign too. I was not aware of that, and none of the press reports I've seen say that. But go Jimmy, Luna Rossa, and I think the interesting question now is whether they do a two-helming situation again on this team, on Luna Rossa, Prata Pirelli, or any of them, with this gentleman or otherwise. Just to wrap up here on Ruggero Tita, he was the Italian Sailor of the Year twice in a row, and he also was nominated for Rolex Sailor of the Year at World Sailing. Now, what about other teams? We'll go on to report this via stuff.co.nz down in New Zealand. Crew details have been scant as the leading teams start to step up their work, according to Stuff. The Defenders Team New Zealand have confirmed a, quote, dream team. Hard to argue with this, by the way. A dream team crew of Pete Burling, Blair Toot, Glenn Ashby, Nathan Otteridge, Josh Jr., and Andy Maloney, the latter two being the big guys in the Finn class, and big, strong boys, and terrific sailors in every respect, as are all the others. And I think Dream Team is not an overstatement in their case of the Kiwi team. Team Britannia, Ineos Britannia, have confirmed that Giles Scott will be back as Sir Ben Ainsley's right-hand man. He may end up driving that boat that's what I think, as well as Neil Hunter, who was involved in the last two cups. American Magic will have British ace Paul Goodison back for 2024 with suggestions the 2008 Olympic laser champion could replace Dean Barker. He has replaced Dean Barker, trust me, on the helm after he was wing trimmer in Auckland. The only question is whether Tom Slingsby ends up with that team as well.
What I'll be curious about is on Britannia, who, if they decide to go with a dual helm situation, who will be in the other hull?
Well, that then I could believe that Ben drives. Then I could believe that Ben drives alongside of Giles Scott, one on each side. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see if everybody goes to the two helm situation or not. You would think that Emirates Team New Zealand are set up to do that now, with both Otteridge and with Pete.
That's the assumption I've been making. Although with fewer crew, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see.
Exactly. Returning Swiss Syndicate Alinghi have given no indication of their crew lineup. That's not quite true. They have introduced a number of them, and we're going to go into that either next Tuesday or Friday because I've gotten some information about Alinghi. We'll tell you some more. Now, I'm still not sure about this land speed record attempt, but they're now working hard on tires. It's the only time an America's Cup team in memory in any of our, has been working on where the rubber meets the proverbial road. Have a look.
One of our biggest challenges has been understanding how to get grip on the ground. So to stop the craft slipping sideways, we rely on tyres to bite into the salt. So that's where it differs a lot from a yacht, where you're on water, where you just have a foil or a centerboard in the water which resists leeway. We've done as much research as we could possibly do in the time available to figure out what tyres are out there and what may work for us. This tyre here is a Goodyear land speed tyre. So these are not rated for highway use, they're a dedicated speed tyre, but they're just really attractive to us for the front end of the craft, the front wheel and in our side pod, where we're really trying to get low rolling resistance. The back end is where we need the most grip, so that's when we come to the rear tyres, and we're going to run two tyres in line. It allows us to keep the fuselage pretty narrow for low frontal windage, but it also lets us get 2 sets of feet on the ground. And then if we are hitting any mild undulations and we're momentarily losing a little bit of grip from one tyre, at least we're confident the chance of having to back step out and doing a bit of a drift is decreased. Where possible, in terms of a lot of the hardware throughout the craft, we've tried to just buy existing components off the shelf. However, on the front wheel here, you can see this rim. This is a custom rim that we've designed and made, and it looks really flat on this side, and that's due to it having a really huge offset. Our main fuselage is kind of acting like a motorbike, that we have one wheel out the front. It's really important that we have our steering axis centered exactly on the center of the tyre. So in order to get the steering axis on the center line, we've had to make this rim. If we didn't have it like that, we would get a lot of induced torque into the steering from the rolling resistance, and that would just feed back to the pilot basically having to fight the wheel the whole time. When we're testing, we're going to find some pretty strange behaviour from the tyres. I don't know which way it's going to go, but we're either going to find that they're too grippy or not enough straight away. It's pretty exciting to think, that those first days of testing, what we'll learn. We're going to learn so much so quickly.
Well, I think it remains to be seen whether this is a huge distraction or whether they are going to learn a lot that is applicable. And I wonder if this is a clear indication that the Cup is going to get delayed a year, because they knew they've got the time to go off and do this. And it's this year. Apparently it's our Northern Hemisphere summer. But they're going to do it on the salt beds I think, in Australia, what I've seen. What do you think, David? Is this a distraction, or is this going to be good for them?
I don't see how it can be good for their R&D efforts, whether it's good from a marketing perspective or a fundraising perspective. I don't know, but I struggle to see whether there's any overlap in terms of aero, given the different apparent wind speeds and whatnot. I don't see the overlap off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either. And anytime I've seen an America's Cup team get involved in something like this off on the side, it's been a huge distraction, and the team has suffered. The result is interesting. Our mutual friend Kimball Livingston, the esteemed past Commodore of St. Francis, I just lost his comment. He said, where was Kimball's comment a minute ago? There it is. He said, ETNZ's design essentially repeats what Richard Jenkins used after 10 years of development on his own noodle and his own dime to get the record at 126.2 miles per hour. Goliath, Kimball has a great turn of phrase. He's like Magnus Wheatley. Goliath comes looking for David.
So I thought most of these speed records, I know the water record, for example, requires you to go a kilometer in one direction, then a kilometer in the other direction. But clearly this asymmetrical land vehicle is not going to be able to go the other direction.
Presumably. I don't think the water record, I don't think you have to go both directions.
On Top Gear, they tried to set the record, and they had to go in both directions.
There must be different records. There must be an asymmetrical all-out record. There must be a symmetrical record. I mean, wow.
No, the one I was looking at was for powerboats.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm looking at the sailing, and I think that most of the sailing boats have been asymmetrical, but who knows? They've been kites of late.
Right.
Right?
Well, they used to have, those proas that would...
Right. Steve Gruber, I think it's to keep the builders and engineers employed. Yes, I think that's probably right. Jody Shields is making more cat jokes. Wonderful project, Gordon Smith says. Replying to Ed Worley, helm forward of the mast like an A-Skeeter ice boat. And by the way, we're going to have Aaron Burry on. We are going to have from Montana. We're going to do this ice boat forum with Aaron Burry on a Q&A, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Clark Chapin, who of course is a semi-retired automotive engineer for Generous Motors, The whole aspect of having to learn about land vehicle chassis design and dynamics would seem to be highly distracting. Yeah, I agree, Clark. I think maybe it's an employment thing. Maybe they're raising some money. I think, follow the money in these sorts of deals. I think they're probably keeping their chief, the so-called team principal, Matteo Donora, who is the Italian billionaire who lives in Monaco. I think he liked the project, and it gave, maybe he's got,
Well,
he may have his mitts on this
and
too.
you got to keep the sponsors happy, right? So if
Yeah, I mean, there's a video that I've aired that a lot of other people have aired with their sponsor logos. Exactly right. Anything else? Vespa sail rocket only on sales on starboard. I'm pretty sure they're asymmetrical. Most of these world record boats, enclosed helm and cockpit like a plane. Yeah, exactly.
well, a lot of those sailing boat were set up for the Namibia speed trench, right?
Exactly right. Okay, shall we press on here? You can see here in the next slide is the beautiful, you know what that is in the foreground? You know what city that is? That's Malaga.
Is
And
that a bull,
that's a
bull
bull
race?
ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, bull ring. All the Spanish cities, of course, like cricket and like American football, like hockey, they've got bull rings. And I went once. That was enough for me. Not my proverbial cup of tea. I am not a Hemingway. I'm a Hemingway fan, but I'm not a Hemingway. Now, we told you a week ago that or was it maybe it was just Tuesday, the Spanish central government has refused, that was their words, not ours, in English, has refused to finance Malaga's America's Cup, meaning Madrid is not going to give any money to the local city and the government because they are already helping them to fund their bid for the 2027 Expo, which is just wrapping up in Dubai, the current Expo. Now, that was an article by Ignacio Lillo Moreno in SurinEnglish.com. Now, there's more news today. Thanks, Stingray, for sending along this link. That is the Malaga mayor on the left, Mayor Francisco de la Torre. And he's on a television show called Alameda. And he announced on that television show yesterday that he's asking the organizers of the Copa America to delay the election of the venue. He defends that the benefits of bringing the competition to the city multiply the investment, is the subhead. Writing in Sewer, they covered this television show. The Copa America de Vela, the America's Cup of Sail, was also discussed on the set of La Alameda, this television show. Malaga aspires to host the 2024 edition, and in theory, the organizers of the famous regatta want to announce to that city that they will finally opt for this in March. This is a Google translation, so it's not perfect. By the end of March, as you all know, is supposed to be, before then, is supposed to be the venue announcement. Along with the capital, meaning Malaga, Cork, Ireland, and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, are in the pool. At least that's what everybody says. Malaga's candidacy, admitted the mayor, currently has institutional backing, meaning the politicians are in favor, but lacks financial backing, which we've been telling you for months. According to the accounts of the alderman, the central government should pay 45 million euros, while another 30 million should come from private sponsorships. Quote, in the current context with the war in Ukraine, finding sponsorships is difficult, he asserted. You think? In this sense, De La Torre explained that he will ask the organizer of the America's Sailing Cup to, quote, delay the election of the venue, unquote. Despite the initial outlay, the mayor argued that the benefits of bringing this competition to the city multiply this investment, both financially and in terms of image for the city. The exact data on economic effects exceed 1.4, that, the Spanish, and they use a comma for a decimal as we do in English and in the Commonwealth. 1.4 million euros. That's a lot of money. 1.4 million euros is $1.4 billion, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's right.
De La Torre said, although he later insisted that, quote, in this international context, it is preferable to delay decision-making, unquote.
You do have to take those economic impact numbers with a grain of salt, right?
I will say same thing to you. I said, do you think? The first economic impact numbers came out from the University of Rhode Island after the 80 Cup. and I was living in Newport by then and starting to get involved in the Cup. And their numbers were actually fairly realistic, but they did a smart thing, and on selling it to Rhode Island and to the State Yachting Commission and so on, because there wasn't much of an investment. But what they pointed out was that the big uptick was the next year. A lot of people, especially now, I mean, remember the '84 Olympics? They had the big, everybody said, oh, we're going to have a terrible traffic, and Black Sunday, that one day was supposed to be the worst traffic day. It was a piece of cake because everybody had left town. And now there's an effect where people leave town during these big events, and then the next year people say, hey, honey, that looks like a pretty good place to go on our holiday.
The '84 Olympics, though, were a unique situation. Those were the only Olympics that ever, in the modern era, have paid for themselves.
True.
They did a very, very smart job down in LA.
Using existing facilities.
Exactly.
Didn't do much in terms of capital.
But you have to be careful counting these economic impacts, because people count like the tourists, and then they count, the laundry for the hotel, and then the guy who sells the laundry powder to the laundry guy who does the sheets for the hotel. And I mean, you go down the line and down the line. At some point, it becomes quite absurd.
It's worse than that, is that they use a multiplier, an accelerator for the dollar, so that if I pay the paper boy for my paper, and then they count half of that dollar that I pay the paper boy, where he goes and spends it to buy a lollipop in the grocery, so it's not just direct expenses. It's on. They call it the Chamber of Commerce uses a 1.5 or sometimes more than that multiplier for.
And you're making the assumption that you weren't going to get the paper anyway.
That was Matthias Stuber, good German name, and diariosuhr.es, talking about them going to invite the organizers of La Copa America to delay the election of the venue. Now, we hear, and several of you sent info to me in the last 24 hours saying you hear that Grant Dalton has left New Zealand. Now that New Zealand's opened up, he can get back in, presumably, and that he's headed to Malaga. Well, no doubt he is headed to Malaga to talk to them. No doubt he's headed up to court to talk to them, to see, the whites of their eyes, as we say in German, unter vier Augen, under four eyes, look at each other and see if they're for real. But put yourself in Grant's situation in Emirates Team New Zealand, or properly the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. They don't want to give the venue to somebody unless they got a written deal saying, here's the money, here's the deal, here's what we'll do, here's the what do, what get proposition.
Although I think Mr. De La Torre makes a reasonable point. Who's going to sign any deal this week? Exactly,
which is what I've been saying all along. You're not going to have the Spanish either. And now people are saying, okay, forget about Malaga, forget about Valencia. We've known that. Now the whole deal is Barcelona. Not going to happen.
Well, I would say with the current environment in Ukraine, no sponsor, no city, no government is going to sign any binding agreement that's 24 months in the future until there's a little more certainty.
Absolutely. Stingray is saying, to be honest, I already want to see Malaga next time I'm in Spain. It looks pretty nice. And I can guarantee you, Stingray, it is nice. I've spent a fair bit of time there in business meetings and one thing or another. Bill Canfield is commemorating Peter Uberoth, who was Uberoth was the head of the LA Olympics.
And wasn't he commissioner of baseball as well?
He was, not very happily, not very successfully.
Well, we could use one right now.
That's another point. That's true. While baseball is on strike, I think the world wants to see it in New Zealand, and besides, that's one of the joys of ownership of the Cup. It's all about arrow. Follow the best, and you will be the best. Jody Shields is, I think, back on that land speed thing. Well, let's carry on with the Cup venue, because there's some more news here, and even the New Zealand Herald now, this was a couple days ago, said in a big headline, 37th America's Cup, could Ukraine crisis impact Cup host? 3 offshore bids remain as deadline looms. Well, I don't think there are 3 offshore bids. I think there's 1 offshore bid, and that is Jeddah, from everything I'm hearing, maybe Abu Dhabi. But apparently Jeddah is the only bid that's said, yeah, here's the money, we can do this, we want to do this. If you want to do it here we go. But as you all know, it's not very popular with teams, with sponsors.
Abu Dhabi, I could see. I could see families moving to Abu Dhabi. I could see that
Bahrain, any Western face, even Dubai.
But Jeddah just seems like a complete non-starter. I can't see the sailors going. I can see teams pulling out. I can see American Magic saying, you know what?
Well, I think American
Goodbye.
Magic would pull out. And we even saw Blair Tuke and Pete Burling say, we don't want to go to Saudi Arabia.
Who wants to move their family to Saudi Arabia for 2 years and
Exactly.
not have a beer? Their wives are covered up. I mean, I don't think so.
I agree with you. So that's what the New Zealand Herald said a couple days ago about this whole business. And I want to give a little Bravo Zulu now to one of our FOSI and the esteemed journalist now, semi-retired guy in the city of London. He's a financier extraordinaire, and he wrote a piece on his Rule 69 blog. That, of course, is Magnus the Magnificent, Magnus Wheatley, in an article entitled Classy Sport. This was the day before, I think yesterday. And he's talking about not only New Zealand and this whole situation in Ukraine, but the venue for the Cup. He says, and I excerpted, I'm not reading the whole article, although I wanted to. It was a terrific piece by Magnus. On balance, sailing's reaction to the murderous, illegal events unfolding in Ukraine at the hands of a dull, deaf, unhinged kleptocrat has been measured and classy. Behind the scenes, it took some prompting from the senior voices in the sport to get action, but we got there eventually. World sailing, under hopefully the last ever Chinese president, don't forget they have a Chinese president, wafted like a feather in the wind waiting for IOC direction. When it came, the missives felt confused at the point of creation and to the point of incredulity, but a restatement drafted by grown-ups clarified the body's tenuous opening position. As you heard me say on this show when we first read it to you on Tuesday's show. Where did I lose my? And the various national bodies did their bit, treading along the line of not wishing to throw the baby out with the bathwater, whilst the class organizations themselves did a terrific job in recognizing their position and politely excluding participation from Russian and Belarus competitors for the foreseeable. Magnus Wheatley writing in his Rule 69 blog, and you can subscribe to that. It's also free of charge. I commend it to you. But wait, there's more. Magnus went on to say, amidst this hellish backdrop, the relatively insignificant matter of the America's Cup venue is being played out, and you have to think that the whole game, the whole playing field, the entire rules of engagement has changed. How can you not? I think it unbelievable and unpalatable to think that anyone in Europe is seriously around the table right now flashing the required money to secure the event. Overnight, oil spiked to levels last seen before 2013 now, and has every chance of going stratospheric in the coming weeks. Look at the futures market. And that leaves only one region with the aces and the barefaced opportunism that can possibly fund the regatta in its planned format. Mark these words carefully. Magnus has written, and especially from somebody who 2 weeks ago said it's not going to be in Auckland. Sorry, it's not going to be there. Of course, things have changed since then. But come back to how sailing has responded to the war and then transport yourself to March 31st. What's that? 27 days from now. And an announcement that the Cup will be in Jeddah or Abu Dhabi. What would be the reaction in these highly reactionary times? And I don't think he means reactionary in the political sense. The America's Cup would skirt dangerously with cancel culture. The Americans would not be happy. The Brits would be uncomfortable. The Italians would be outraged. The Swiss may well not be neutral. The New Zealand Yacht Squadron would be facing mutiny, and its officers may as well do the honorable thing. Support would ebb away from the Cup faster than an oligarch fleeing Monaco. It's dangerous times to be doing an OE, an offshore excursion, on the Cup and thinking that Europe or the Middle East are the answer. If so, what the hell was the question again? Right now, the only palatable options, if we were to ever get this event away, is to either ice the decision due to unforeseen geopolitical issues, and we'd all understand that, and I agree, or to corral the challengers and the defender, pool finances, get real, and stick the whole shebang in the relative safety of New Zealand waters. Huh? Magnus has done a 180 here in the last couple of weeks. Of course, as I say, times have changed. Nobody's going to thank me for my views, but come on, this whole charade has to be called for what it is. I'm comfortable saying what others won't, but all are thinking. The cup, meaningful to us all as it is, but irrelevant in the sports world, is collateral damage for the time being in a global sense. The protagonists and those with a vision were doing the right thing right up until the world changed. The unknown unknowns reared their ugly head, and a recalibration of expectation and a sense of realism now needs to be injected into those that still think there's a glimmer of hope for a cup in 2024. Totally agree. And so what if the decision was delayed? We're living in extraordinary times, hour by hour, and watching untold misery and desperation unfold before our eyes. Is that the backdrop for billionaires and corporates to go spending hundreds of millions of dollars to race carbon fiber flying machines in a machismo contest? I fear not. In fact, I could actually foresee teams pulling out. I could see sailors voting with their feet in the coming weeks as families come first. I could see an implosion of will for the whole event. Magnus finally says, as it stands today, the reality is New Zealand or nothing. That's the bare, harsh facts, and however it's done, whatever the format, sailing needs to wake up and get real. That or ice the decision to the end of 2022 and see how the world looks then. He concludes, strange times, difficult times, sailing must do the right thing. It has done so eventually in the current crisis. It will do it again. It always does. I have every faith. Magnus Wheatley writing in his rule eloquently in his Rule 69 blog. David.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting comments here. Baton Rouge says he's glad he thinks there will still be a cup cycle, which makes me wonder. So if everything breaks down entirely, all negotiations with potential venues break down and whatnot, won't it default to the terms of Royal Yacht Squadron's
letter of agreement,
and then by default it will happen whether Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron wants it or not?
Well, but that's a good question, and the point is the Royal Yacht Squadron and Ineos Britannia going to agree to delay the event? Because right now it looks to me like it's going to get delayed. How else are you going to run?
But that would have to be by consent with the challenger of record.
By mutual consent.
Otherwise, by default, it will go back to the letter.
Exactly. And the challenger, remember, the defender names the venue, challenger names the date. And of course, they've mutually agreed to let the defender go name the venue in due course, originally by, November, and now it's been delayed till March. And I don't think Ineos is going, because they're spending, tell me what, £1 million pounds a month?
Oh, it's going to be more than that.
Probably more than that. So it's a good point and good question.
I don't think that New Zealand could just unilaterally say, you know what, we're going to have it in Jeddah in 2026.
No, they can't. They're going to have to do some real negotiations with Sir James Ratcliffe. What other comments here? Mutual consent may fall apart now, Ed Worley is saying. Yep. Bill Wingrove is going to follow in with the Everglades Challenge, starts tomorrow from Fort DeSoto. Oh, he's talking about a real event. Ed Worley, with the situation in Europe, the NATO Bay are going to spend billions on military upgrades and NATO countries, I guess. Upgrades and update. The government dollars are going to dry up. Magnus is suggesting the challengers will help fund the event in Auckland. Color me skeptical without some oversight of how finances get spent. Well, the truth is the challengers are already part of funding it. They get charged for this or that, and they have to help with the television and so on. And if there's any proceeds, they get a cut of it. I think this thing is fraught. I think Mr. Dalton is heading now for Europe to look them, as I said a minute ago, in the whites of their eyes and see what they can do. But unless it's going to be in the Middle East where they are sports washing their money, it's going to be back in Auckland, which, of course, I've been saying anyway for months.
As we would all hope. Julie Ahrens is saying it's not going to Jeddah. Stingray's saying Abu Dhabi seems more plausible than Jeddah. The only ones who have any money right now with oil at $110 is the Middle East, right? So
or the Russians.
So St. Petersburg is a potential venue.
You're doing Sochi. Yeah, here we go. Okay, let's move on here. I don't want to belabor this venue thing, but these are just pictures of what they are going to miss in Auckland. For those of you down there, Peter Selwyn, thank you for your various communiques. He's the one who helped me sort out the Maori that I fumbled the other day. But look, you're going to miss this, and the people deserve this. Their tax dollars have been used before. The countries come together to help fund not only the team but the event, and I think this is what they're going to miss, and this is why also it's going to end up back in Auckland, because people are going to, even this, I mean, the team is not going to be the home team. And I've been saying, David, you've heard me say over and over on this show while you were watching, and now since you've been sitting in for Julia, you risk losing the cup, just like Golden Gate did by moving it to Bermuda. You lose a lot of mojo. You're no longer the home team. You no longer get the support of the cheering adulation fans, not only in the front of your base, but when you're walking on the streets in your team uniform from your apartment or your home. This is a big deal.
You're giving away a huge advantage by hosting it anywhere other than at home.
Exactly.
And I think there's scope for just dialing back the ambition. They already have the viaduct. So, you need on-the-water judges. You need to put the marks out and so forth. You do not need... what are they going to spend $80 million on?
Well, they're going to fund the team of that.
Well, 40 of it goes to the team, right? And then the other 80...
No, 80 is going to go to the team. 40 is 120, and 40 is going to run the regatta.
Okay, $40 million to run the regatta.
And then Daltz is going to raise the other 80 for the team. $200 million is what he's saying. I mean, it's outrageous. But look at read Stingray's comment, the last comment there on the list, and I'll put this slide back up because you just said it, David. You're absolutely right.
Look at those gorgeous America's Cup facilities in Auckland, and that's absolutely right. I mean, I went down there twice. It's a beautiful facility. The bases are there. The location is great. It was, an industrial dump beforehand, and it's now a very nice location. There's the Maritime Museum nearby. It's walking distance to the hotels. It's a great venue.
It is indeed. And I've been saying this now for months. I still think these gentlemen will somehow get it together with the government. Mr. Dunphy, Mark Dunphy, who, by the way, is going to come back on the show. They've got their big push going on, the Kiwi Home Defense. Jim Farmer, Grant Dalton. I think they will somehow come together. And by the way, if they don't run it in New Zealand, it's going to end up in court. I'm hearing this again this week from several different sources in New Zealand. This prominent retired judge, Sir Edmund Thomas, or Ted, still says he's going to go to court, and that alone is not good news for any of us. I want to play one last video here. I played it on Tuesday, but it's so compelling that I think we should play it again. This is from the famous New Zealand commentator. I'm just going to run it here and listen to.
It is essential that
Murray
we have
Deaker.
a home defence for the America's Cup, or that famous line, "The America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup," will be changed to "The America's Cup is now Grant Dalton's Cup." The winning of the America's Cup and the Rugby World Cup are the two sporting events that galvanised our country more than anything else. For us to get back the passion, the pride, and the joy of the event, it is essential that we have it here at home. It all started with Red Sox, and then taxpayers' money and ratepayers' money made it our cup. For it to be our cup, it needs to be done in our water, or it is no longer our team.
Bravo Zulu. All I can say, I should get Mr. Deaker. I don't know him. I've met him, but I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I should get him on the show.
He's very enthusiastic.
He is the John Madden of New Zealand. He is. Who are other American? Who was the guy that did Monday Night Football? The lawyer who was outspoken and did the Muhammad Ali fights way back when.
Well, there was Howard Cosell.
Howard Cosell, thank
yeah,
you.
I mean,
See,
he was enthusiastic as well.
He was great, and he's the Howard. This guy's also, in some ways, the Howard Cosell of very bright. Obviously, we should get him on the show. Somebody in New Zealand, help me get Murray Deeker on the show because he's right. The Red Sox. Anyway, this campaign is going on, and they've got people like Mr. Deeker and many others. I played some of those videos. We'll play some more next week for you as they are gathering more and more from senior serious people in NZ and gathering reasons for why. I think they're up to, 20-something reasons why the Cup should be in New Zealand. It should not be sailing away to another country. New Zealand, home of the America's Cup 2024, which to me is looking increasingly like 2025. Anyway, last thoughts?
Bill Wingrove said if Daltz moves it out of Auckland, compared to the Tight Five, it'll look kind. And
yeah, exactly. You think of the huge stink,
right?
The Black Hearts that got together and fought Russell and that Brad and the whole group when they came back with Alinghi in 2003. And here they're not just taking some of the athletes out of the country to go sail for another country, they're taking a whole bloody event. It's unbelievable.
Well, and Ed Worley says $40 million to host a Cup Series, seems hard to believe. And if you think about the most successful Challenger Selection Series and Cups of the modern era, you probably want to put 87 there, 2000 and 2007. I would say have been the most successful. And leaving aside the infrastructure improvements to Auckland and Valencia, which have already been done in Auckland, why spend $40 million? It just, It seems gilding the lily.
Exactly. Look at your girlfriend's comment. Joyce.
Murray nailed it and love his shirt.
Julie Aarons keeps telling us that Daltz will never sit down. She knows Daltz well. Her husband is very close friends with him. Will never sit down with Kiwi Home Defense. Judge Ted has no standing. Well, he does if he goes to court and wins, Julie. It will happen when and where it will. Okay, well, that's true. And Julie, I respect your views and really appreciate your coming on here. Wet Hog in Annapolis, if it isn't defended in NZ, the Cup will become a Sail GP knockoff. Wow. Maybe true.
Although Sail GP arguably has better marketing with the rotation of venues and the TV broadcast and the continuity from one year to the next and the prize money and so forth. Unless the America's Cup keeps the cachet of being the America's Cup, it's a pale imitation of Sail GP.
It is indeed. It is indeed. There's another comment here. Stingray saying Kiwi Home Defense is a video from Mr. Key, John Key, a former NZ Prime Minister. I ran that video on the show the other day, actually. So that was interesting. Speaking of enough, anything else on that, David? Any other comments?
Not on the venue.
Okay, then let's go. Speaking of Sail GP, I got a couple of videos. That event's here in 3 weeks' time in San Francisco. We're all looking forward to it. And they keep pumping out cool videos. Here are two. Number one.
Yeah, San Francisco's conditions are rough. Really cold water, really strong winds.
The cold hits you. Could be pretty breezy in San Francisco.
It's strong conditions, and that usually is the case.
You could be racing in 20 knots in San Francisco, but it feels like 30.
You can get light winds in San Francisco, especially in March. You can get mid-range conditions. So you really need a playbook that covers everything, not just one set of conditions.
No shorts and t-shirt, I guarantee. I'd be shocked if I saw any grinder in a dry suit.
Myself and our team will be the first in the dry suits. In general, we don't like the cold.
Some days in summer I had the full hoodie with the dry suit and on the chase boat.
And then the last team probably wearing short sleeve rash shirts, light wetsuits. I reckon it'll probably be the British team.
Cold water coming at you fast.
If you ever needed more motivation not to get cold water over you, you've got it in San Francisco.
David, you made a comment while we were watching that.
Yeah, they keep talking about the consistently breezy conditions, which is true from first week of May until last week of September. But in the intervening months, that is not true. We do not have 20 to 25 knot thermal breezes every day. It's either the way it is today, where we could be water skiing on San Francisco Bay because there's gusts to 2 knots, or if we have a storm, then it's blowing 40 from the north. So there is no 20 to 22 knot westerly the last week in March.
You know, I'm just looking on the webcams. I'm trying to get the webcam from the bay. This is the webcam from the marina side. That's out the looking out the south side of St. Francis Yacht Club, and you can see how windy it is.
Yep.
But as you say, it's weather system.
Well, there's a storm coming in this afternoon.
Exactly. So we got a big storm coming in, and you can see how breezy it is. The flags and the boats rocking back and forth. It's windy as hell. And exactly as you said, David, we can have a lot of breeze, or we can have next to no breeze.
But so far, I mean, what is it, March 4th? It hasn't rained since December.
Exactly. But it's going to rain now. The camera's not available. I'd go look at the bay, but nonetheless, it is windy. So again, it's March, and the breezes, we've always said it's iconically windy, it's reliably windy and iconically beautiful, but that's really May through September. It can even be light in September.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Sail GP video number 1. Now there's another one. This is from the new Swiss team, and they've been training in the Artemis facility, which I think is in Ireland. Is that where the simulator is? Have a look.
We're here at Artemis Technologies in Belfast. Just finished our 2 days in the sim. It was really good to get some hours in the boat, learn the hardware, and try to get some muscle memory in. So when we get in Bermuda on the real boat, we actually can go training pretty quickly. We're here with Stuart and Jason, which will be the team at the start of season 3. Stu will be on the wing, so he's quite important on the performance of the boat, really making sure we're as fast as possible. And Jason is the flight controller, so he's always just looking at that foil and making us fly above the water. I think we're progressing pretty fast, so we're looking forward for the real deal.
Okay. Nice video coming here in 3 weeks' time to San Francisco. We're all looking forward to it. I'm sure you are too, David.
Indeed. Last time it was fantastic. It's great racing. It's a great venue.
Here's this look I think we should be going after.
Nice.
Yerke Yarby sent that along. He put something off the yard arm, the national flag, and we put up the recall flag. I think we should be doing that at our clubs. Quick corrector Crutonic segment here. And I like what the Star Sailors League is doing. And that is they have, at great expense and a terrific amount of work, they are doing a world ranking of sailors, skippers, I think, and crew, to try to rank all of these sailors, regardless of class, regardless of discipline even. And I don't know what their algorithm is, what their point system is, but obviously they've weighed the America's Cup heavily in the Olympics. This just came out in the last 24 hours here, and they go, it's not just the top 10, it goes a lot deeper in this, but I didn't have time to look beyond this top 10. And I ask you, from your personal knowledge, is this top 10 correct, or more or less correct, or is it Crutonic? And if so, why? Burling, Stepanovic, Gimson, Rindam, I don't know John Gimson, I'm sorry. Rindam, Weirn, there's Martina Grail, Baumeister, Dahlberg, Anton Dahlberg, yeah, okay. Barech, and Hannah Mills in the top 10. Clickbait ranking, I don't think it's clickbait, Blake. I think they're really making an honest effort. And Wingrove says my name's not on it. But is that correct or Crutonic, David?
This is a fool's errand. I think it's Crutonic. How can you try to rank single-handed French guy sailing a trimaran around the world against 49er sailors? It's a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say top 10 offshore sailors, top 10 match racers, top 10 dinghy sailors. Okay, but to
But aren't you glad they're making the effort?
Well, that's why I think Blake makes a good point with clickbait. Sure, if it gets us talking about it, that's fun.
Well, but they're going to use this for other purposes, including within their Star Sailors League when they get going. And so I think the effort to do it, and I'm sure it's not as wide as, trying to also include single-handed offshore sailors. But there's in my mind, there's one glaring error. Let's assume that they get the algorithm right. These are all top names. These are all superb sailors, top people. But there's one glaring error.
You mean including a Swede?
No, I think Anton Dahlberg's probably deserving as most of those. But who is missing in that list? I ask all of you. Who is missing in that list? Do we have any comments? John Gimson, even, I'm going to say. John, you know these people as well or better than most. Hamish Ross, how do you rank one crew member against another? Is it just the helm? Well, yeah, okay. I agree with David. It's pointless. Gordon Smith in Denmark is saying. No, I don't think Buddy Melgus is missing from that list. I think he's a little long in the tooth now. Ashby, Steve Gruber is saying, there's a point. Ashby, you wonder why he's not on that list. But Stingray's got it. See what Stingray just said? How can you have a list like this and not have Tom Slingsby, who's at the top of Sail GP? Stingray will excuse yours. Stingray, of all people, should be able to spell Slingsby. Sting and sling. That's a typo, I know, I'm teasing. But how can you not have Tom Slingsby on this list? He's at the top of Sail GP. He's won the Moth Worlds and every other Moth event ongoing. What do you think, David?
No, if you're going to go through the exercise, then obviously he should be on the list. Obviously, probably top 3, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got to, and okay, they're doing it. They've got to adjust their algorithm. Where's Slingers? Greg Phillips says, yep, comparing apples and oranges. Emmett says, Spithill, okay, yeah, but has he done anything else besides the America's Cup? Goodison. Julie Aarons agrees, how can you put it together a list without Slingsby? John Gimson medaled in the NACRA 17, but he didn't gold medal, as we know. The Italian was the gold medalist. Karen Robertson, thank you. Cider and spelling are not a good mix. Do the single-handed French skippers not qualify? Wet Hog, I don't know. I don't know what the algorithm is.
If you're going to go through this exercise, trying to do it mathematically,
well, they are
with an algorithm. I don't think that's the right way to do it.
They do have a mathematic algorithm.
I understand, but any algorithm that you come up with is going to be very easily gamed depending on how you weight different classes and how you weight different regattas. And
exactly,
you could I could come up with an algorithm to back into whatever list I want to if I properly weight the Corinthian midwinners. You're better off asking the top 100 sailing journalists for their top 10 and then coming up with a qualitative list the way they do for Hall of Fame or Rolex Yachtsman of the Year or those kinds of things.
Well, that was going to be my point. There should be some subjectivity to this. You should be able to go in and ask some senior series people, journalists or otherwise, but coaches, guys like Emmett would know as well or better than most, but say, hey, you know what? You're missing Slingsby.
Right. So your algorithm is wrong.
So there's something wrong with your algorithm. But again, I think God bless them for trying to do this.
But that works for tennis where everybody plays in the same tournaments. That works for golf where everybody plays in the same tournaments. When you have 49er sailors sailing in the Olympics and you have guys and women, Hannah Mills, sailing in a completely different class in a different venue, and then you have doesn't Merritt do some offshore sailing as well?
Yep.
So what algorithm are you going to have to compare the Volvo Ocean race to an Olympic gold medal?
Well, I think they're focusing on Olympic classes and the Olympics and the America's Cup and presumably, hopefully, things like Sail GP. But there are a lot of comments here. Clark Chapin, odd. They can get number one approximately correct, but the other top sailors in the highest ranking pro circuit are all omitted. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm glad they're doing it. I think the list, I think most of you agree it's cretonic. But I think it's a good first effort. I'm actually fairly upbeat about it. There's some names on here I didn't know. And I hope they can improve it from here. I mean, this guy Zamba Bresh, for example, is just a fabulous sailor, one of the best in the world. Matty Warren down in Oz is great. And let's just see what they can do. Tansi Stepanovic. It's Ben Remacher is reminding us it's also based on regatta results. So if you don't do enough, if you don't do enough regattas, you can't score too well. Well, Ben, that's I think the argument we're making here. It's a fleet racing ranking, so offshore not counted. So okay, that's good, Ben. Thank you for that. Blake Middleton, you see what he's saying? Diversity of I lost the comment. What did Blake
diversity
say?
of classes and venues is one of the most magical aspects of sailing. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, most of you seem to think this is semi-crotonic or more.
When Gordon Smith said, and I agree with him, perfect example of how not to use an algorithm. What they should do is tell us what the algorithm is, and then we can argue about the algorithm rather than argue about the sailors. And then,
well, I think they should tell us the algorithm too. I think that we should all have a crack at it and say, hey, maybe you're doing this and that wrong. That's a good point.
But then I can make the algorithm say whatever I want the rankings to say.
Well, but that's okay if you think that subjectively, Tom Slingsby should be in there. You'd tweak it a little bit until you got Tom in there, and you'd say, "Hey, is this a better algorithm?" I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, they had to do it subjectively to begin with. Their algorithm, they didn't just do it pure mathematically.
Exactly.
Okay, we're to the D block, to the final. By the way, while this music's playing, if you're just joining us, we're an hour and 37 minutes in. Julia's taken the week off. She's in hospital for a little tune-up, nothing major. She may be out today. I talked with her this morning. She sounds great. And David, if you don't know David, many of you here in the Bay Area and beyond will know him, but he is a member here of San Francisco Yacht Club, St. Francis Yacht Club, the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club, where he lived for a few years. And you can tell by listening that he knows a lot about our beloved sport. And we're delighted to have him with us at the Beach Street Yacht Club in Studio B. He was with us on Tuesday, and if Julia is not ready to go again on next Tuesday, maybe he'll be back with us then too.
I very much hope this will be my last appearance, and Julia will be back where she belongs.
But if she can't, you'll be back?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay, that would be crotonic, David, if you didn't come back. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and I didn't do any of these on Tuesday because we were all so depressed about the war, and I didn't want to make light, but life goes on and you got to carry on and talk about all the things we talk about. And this came from Ted Ryman. Thank you. 0 deaths for the first time since May. I mean, it's a landmark. This is terrific news. May 2020, for the first time, South Africa has recorded 0 COVID-19 related deaths in a 24-hour cycle. So, it's amazing, David, how we don't even talk about COVID anymore. It's all, the war has supplanted even whatever concerns we had.
Except for masks for school children.
Well, which is crotonic. I mean, it's going away quickly, too.
But it's the remaining controversy around here.
Did you get COVID? Did I ask you that on Tuesday? I don't think I did.
No, but my wife did, and my son did.
Oh, dear.
Our ex-wife. But no, I never did. Not yet.
Knock on wood, we didn't. Yeah, exactly. The price of fuel, you Europeans, and the Antipodeans, for that matter, all make fun of us here because our fuel prices have been so low, but they're not so low anymore. It's above $5 a gallon here, and I know you will still tell us don't worry about it, it's way high. I lived in Europe for 18 years. I know how high the price of petrol and diesel are in Europe. The car faints after seeing the price of fuel. If you ever see me jogging, this would apply to me. Please kill whatever is chasing me. Yeah, I walk with some pace, but I don't want to do that. Now, this is, I think, an oldie but goodie. I think I've seen this before. The French and the German on this cup looks questionable. Caution, hot. Avoid pouring on the crotch area. You do the French.
Ne pourrez pas dans l'area de oulala.
Nein, droppen Sie hot Kaffee und Sie Knackers. I think the German and the French are suspect. Thank you. I think Stingray sent that to me. Speaking of Germans, those of you who are German or Germanic or Teutonic or Aussie, you got to have this with a sense of humor. But this was sent to me by one of our German foes. He says, as a German, I just want to get something straight. The entire Western world wants us, Germany, to build up a huge army, march through Poland, fight the Russians if needed. Just writing it down so there's no misunderstanding in the future. You got to have a sense of humor, right?
Absolutely.
These poor Ukrainians and that bloody nuclear. We didn't even talk about the nuclear plant. But man, oh man, that was a frightening moment last night when I first heard that on the news. Yeah, Wet Hog, sorry, it's about to hit $4 there. Well, it's well north of $5 here in California. Of course, we tax it so heavily because we're Plutonic. Okay, that was funny, Gordon Smith said. Gordon, who's British, living in Denmark. Joyce Shirella, yes, David is a great asset, but Julia can't be replaced, of course. Love you all. Yeah, well, we'll welcome. Maybe we'll have David and Julia back. Maybe they'll alternate or something. Who knows? Things on Earth you can see from space. The Great Pyramids of Giza. The Amazon River, the Grand Canyon. David, you can get your finger ready. You can read it.
The balls of Vladimir Zelensky. Do I wag it at myself?
Several of you sent that to me as well. The cojones of Vladimir Zelensky, which is spelled with 2 Y's in. That's one of the things we've learned. And finally, just to wrap up, I mean, it's such a shame what's going on with these poor people, and it's nice to see our sailing world as well as most of the rest of the world hanging tight and showing some solidarity. But here in the starting line, or I am Crutonic today. The finish line, here is my final thoughts on what's going on in the world and my hopes for the future. You ready? That's slide 1.
Ready.
Slide 2. I was going to put in the show today, just again, in case you were looking away. A lot of people listen to the show, they don't watch it, but you can only hope that's what happens. The guy blows himself up, and hopefully not too much more of the world and his own country in the process. I was going to put this whole question about assassination and correct Crutonic, but that's just too serious. It's too heavy. And the pundits last night on cable news are saying, we ought to go in there and take him out. And I don't even get into that. Let's just hope that he blows himself up, or the plutocrats or the oligarchs or somebody blows him up and he's out of there.
Much more likely that his inner circle becomes disillusioned with the progress and he is deposed.
Well, and then who do you get? Can't be worse than him, though, right?
Always leery about saying that, but I suspect he'll get it. It's not going to be a member of the opposition, but it doesn't have to be. Anyone who's prepared to step back from the brink will be an improvement.
Well, there's Wingrove saying, finger whack from Julia. Come on, that was clean. You should have seen some of the jokes that you all sent me. I didn't put the real dirty ones. Love to Julia, miss you, and pray for her quick recovery. And thanks, Mary Longpree down in Newport Beach. Thank you so much, David. Stingray is saying, for co-piloting again today, and best wishes to Julia's happy return. Clark, not only is California fuel heavily taxed, the gasoline is a specific, tightly controlled blend that drives up refining costs. Did you know that Clark Chapin is a fuel specialist at Generous Motors, or was?
I did. I'd love to speak with him about the new fuel for the Formula One cars.
Be careful what you wish for, Steve Gruber is saying. Yeah. Stingray, yes, the Russian inner circle is the key. So thanks, Stingray. Rob Sternstein, have a great weekend all. Let's hope peace comes soon. Get well soon, Julia. Another great show. Thank you, Ed Worley, and thanks to all of you. You get to say...
Please do like, follow, and share the program.
Indeed, and comments, if you're watching in replay, they're welcome. We I think, broke a record today. I think we had more comments, David, in the first 30 minutes. I think we broke the 100. We get a notification now on this.
Yeah, I saw that.
By the way, I didn't put it in the show, but this system that we use, Restream.io, is a Ukrainian company. They're based now here, and they've all had an office in Kiev, as I've understood the pronunciation in Ukrainian as opposed to Russian. Kiev, we used to say. But it's a Ukrainian company. It's a high-tech company. This is a cool country. And they got a lot of industry and a lot of tech.
And it's a big country. It's not a rounding error by any means.
Exactly. So this Restream.io, which we now use to send our show out to multiple channels, multiple platforms, and they are a cool Ukrainian company. And we get a notice after 100 comments, and that happened today, I think, in record time. So support us on Patreon, if you will. Thank you, Mark Wharton Reed, for your contribution this week as became a patron. Patreon.com/join. Sailing Illustrated. David, final comments?
Yeah, I hope this is my last show. Best wishes
for Julia's sake.
Yes, for Julia's sake.
It's not like I'm whipping you here,
no,
flogging you, or making
but
you work too hard.
I'm here doing, my little guest appearance while Julia's getting her tune-up, and I hope that her tune-up goes according to plan, and she's back in this chair on Tuesday.
Well, I think talking with her this morning, it's going well, and hopefully she'll be well and truly in great shape come next Tuesday. And thanks to you again for doing this. Much appreciated.
It's been my pleasure and my honor. Thanks.
Indeed, and it's been our pleasure to have you. We hope you all have a great weekend. You can spend it with the ones you love, and even better yet, you can go sailing. And if you can, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.